Well, welcome to everyone joining us from around the world on Zoom and on YouTube. My name is Imani Jamal. I'm the Dean of the Princeton School for Public and International Affairs, known in short as SPIA. Previously, I served as the director of the Bope Center for Peace and Justice here at Princeton, in addition to my teaching and research duties, which are still ongoing as Dean. Shortly after I arrived last fall, the US withdrew its troops from Afghanistan, and the Taliban took over the presidential palace in Kabul. As we watched in horror as so many Afghans fled their homes, the SPIA leadership began to consider how we could help. We recognized our academic and research community offers a place where Afghan refugee scholars could conduct work that contribute towards and advocates for Afghanistan's rebuilding. I'm honored to announce the new Afghanistan Policy Lab at SPIA, which is co-founded by the Liechtenstein Institute on Self-Determination, based here at the school. Joining the lab are 6 academic fellows from Afghanistan and another 3 who will informally be participating in the lab. They all worked previously in support of US government efforts in the country. These scholars will collaborate with members of our community on policy-relevant research. They will work toward the lab's overall mission to help build an inclusive, peaceful, and prosperous Afghanistan, equally representing all citizens. It's my priority to make sure our school is an active participant in global policy conversations, and it's responsive to needs within the global community. I am proud the lab will work to analyze and provide policy recommendations to address challenges from the evolving situation on the ground in Afghanistan. Please use the Q&A button to submit your questions at the end of the remarks. We'll answer as many as we can. I now would like to turn over to Professor Andrew Moravchik, who is the director of the Liechtenstein Institute on Self-Determination, to give a few remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dean Jamal. Welcome to all out there. As director of the Liechtenstein Institute here at Princeton, LISD for short, I'm indeed very pleased that we can be helpful in this effort by serving as one of the 2 initiating partners of the Afghanistan Policy Lab. Afghanistan is particularly important to us here at LISD because our institute is fundamentally concerned with self-determination, the self-determination of nations, the self-determination of groups, and the self-determination of individuals. And such issues are obviously at stake today in Afghanistan, which is why LISD has in fact been involved for over 2 decades in affairs relating to Afghanistan. This is mostly due to the indefatigable efforts of our founding previous director, Wolfgang Dunsbeck-Gruber, Professor Dunsbeck-Gruber, who will speak in a few moments. Going forward, LISD's immediate role in the Afghanistan Policy Lab will be twofold. First, our primary substantive role will be to help mobilize the Afghanistan Reflection Team, a team that will focus on the activities of countries other than the United States in regard to Afghanistan. We will do this by building on and extending networks that have been in place for several decades already. We'll encourage more intensive and inclusive discussions globally, initiate and sponsor relevant research, formulate suggestions and policy proposals, and offer policy and public outreach concerning these activities. LISD's primary administrative role, its second role, will be to coordinate and support the many different actors who are already involved and we hope will become involved in this process here at Princeton. We're expecting to fold in many more people, and that requires some kind of administrative coordination. Executive Director Nadia Krisan will head up that effort for the moment. And now I'm pleased to hand off to my Princeton colleague, Professor and Ambassador Dan Kurtzer.
Thank you, Andy. It's a real privilege to join you today as we launch the Afghanistan Policy Lab. Having spent 30 years in the United States Foreign Service, I know well how the diplomatic community and the academic community can interact for the good of all of us. This new lab will benefit tremendously from the academic depth and Princeton's reputation, and its reputation in Washington for serious policy analysis and recommendations. both while I've spent my time here at Princeton teaching, and before that, when I was working in government, I know that policymakers look to universities, especially Princeton, for ideas, for analysis, for lessons learned, for recommendations. They are open to meeting with our students and our faculty. They are open to meeting with our fellows. And we often see ideas that started here in Princeton find their way into the policy mix in Washington and also abroad. This is the great promise of the Afghanistan Policy Lab. Given the heavy investment that the United States made in Afghanistan over the years, and the progress registered in several important areas, such as women's empowerment and education, it's imperative to develop policies and processes to continue this progress, even in a very challenging political environment on the ground. As with other policy initiatives underway at Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, the aim here is policy relevance. Under the leadership of Ambassador Adela Raz, and with the involvement of experienced Afghan experts, the Policy Lab can interact with our graduates and undergraduates, and with frequent high-level visitors from Washington and abroad. The lab will prove to be a font of ideas and realistic policy alternatives. Two aspects of this lab will prove to be most important. First, it will be a space for dialogue and communications, where the fellows, the faculty, students, and guests can exchange ideas and develop realistic plans to solve serious problems. Second, Afghanistan citizens, not foreigners, will exercise the central role in this process. The outcomes will be homegrown and appropriate for the people of Afghanistan. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, the director of the Afghanistan Policy Lab, Ambassador Adela Raz. Ambassador Raz served as Afghanistan's permanent representative to the United Nations and as the ambassador of Afghanistan to the United States from July 2021 until February of this year. Ambassador Raz.
Thank you. Let me start by expressing my sincere gratitude to Princeton University, to SPIA, the Princeton School of Public and International Affairs, and to the dynamic leadership of SPIA. None of what we celebrate today as the launch of the Afghanistan Policy Lab would have been possible without the support, leadership, and generosity of SPIA and its team. I thank you all. Reflecting on the current situation in Afghanistan and the events of post-August 15, 2021, there is fear and anxiety, pain and concern for people of Afghanistan. It is true, we cannot change the tragedies that have happened, but we need to think forward to ensure no more Afghan generation are lost to conflict and oppression. We cannot allow our country to go backward. To achieve this, the work of the Afghanistan Policy Lab at Princeton will seek to answer the complex questions facing the country and not seeking to prescribe external policies, but instead promoting the ideas and views of Afghans here and on the ground to build inclusive, sustainable, and a lasting Afghanistan policy solution. Princeton's commitment to knowledge and problem solving requires no introduction, along with Leslie's expertise on Afghanistan, and we believe that the connection being built today will help not only propose pragmatic solutions for the future of our country, but will also help energize the university's vibrant community on the need to continue to study and engage on Afghanistan. This is the community of the policymakers of today and tomorrow, and we look forward to engaging with you in the many months ahead. With all that said, delving into the specifics of the lab, this is a project that will see the work of 9 Afghan policy fellows coming from different segments of the Afghan society with relevant expertise. Our work will be divided into 4 areas of concentration, which will be humanitarian aid, civic space, women, and national healing and reconciliation. These 4 areas will seek to answer the question of how do we protect the dynamic society civilian spaces, and respect for human rights that we have built over the past 20 years for Afghan men and women, while also addressing the existential challenge of the humanitarian catastrophe and the need for a sustainable peace. In short, these are the areas that require our immediate attention to mitigate suffering and help our country get back on track to development. In working on these areas, we will be publishing policy recommendations, papers, organizing panel discussions, hosting policy spaces, and engaging with the Princeton community. We aim to reach think tanks, policymakers, and other representatives in the United States and abroad with the hope of contributing to the conversation on the path forward in Afghanistan with solutions that truly speak Afghan language, are people-centered, and have the need of all segments of the Afghan society. This will not be an easy journey, but we are motivated by our determination for Afghanistan and our people, and the dedication and support of our friends and allies here at Princeton, in the United States, and the international community as a whole. We once again thank you for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in all our future engagements. Now it's my great honor to give the floor to His Excellency Salam Fayyad, who I will have the honor working with him closely in the Policy Lab. Your Excellency, the floor is yours.
I think now I'm on. Sorry, I was muted. Thank you very much, Ambassador Duras, for your kind introduction. Thank you, Dean Jamal, for your leadership on this important issue, for having taken the steps along with your team to get it started, to get us to the point of this launch. Happy to say that so far good work has been done in preparation on getting the process started. Honored to have been asked by you to serve as an advisor to the lab, something which, as I have just indicated, we started to do together with the fellows and some more who will be joining shortly. I think in all of what has been said by others before me, there is a lot that gives me a sense of hope and confidence that this will end up contributing qualitatively to what needs to be done in the here and now to be of help to the people of Afghanistan. Good, well-considered policy recommendations are a key instrument of influencing the debate and the conversation, indeed in getting one started, given all what we know, all we know about world attention being preoccupied with other things and crises simultaneously. Multiple issues to be considered. I think a good amount of work needs to go into prioritizing things with a view on emphasizing those issues that are of great relevance to helping out Afghanistan people here and now. With an eye, of course, on strategic issues that could make the issue of Afghanistan relevant again for policymakers. I think what could link some of the threads, various threads of what has been said so far is emphasis on quality. And insofar as that is concerned, because I do believe for the lab to really deliver on its mission, it clearly has to influence, and if it is to influence effectively, the work that it is to produce has to be of a compelling quality, something which I'm assured, given the varied and pertinent experience of the lab fellows, as well as the interaction that's expected to take place between the fellows and the Princeton community, faculty members, research community, and hopefully as students as well. Once again, honored to be a part of this initiative. Thank you very much. Look forward to continuing to work with you. And now it's my pleasure to introduce to you our next speaker, member of Afghanistan Parliament, Nahid Ahmadi.
Thank you so much, dear Dean Amani, Ambassador Raz, all SPIA community, distinguished speakers, fellows, professors, all the audience. It's my honor and my pleasure to be speaking at this wonderful event. And I want to congratulate all of you for this timely launch of Afghanistan Policy Lab. I'm so privileged to be part of this remarkable initiative. And I want to thank Princeton University for honoring me with this opportunity. I felt so relieved understanding the fact that our struggle, our story, our decade-long battle for freedom and democracy in Afghanistan has audience in the United States, has audience in Princeton community, and for me and all other fellows that I represent here, working with this initiative is not just a job or a personal issue. It's about Afghanistan. APL will be Afghan Women Platform to write a new chapter of women rights movement in the global level, a stage to tell our story to the world, to further the unfinished battle of Afghan women for freedom and dignity. And as we gather here, people of Afghanistan experience the most tragic juncture of their history. Today, under Taliban rule, all four features of democracy, such as representation, rule of law, active participation of people in civic life, in free and fair election, the human rights of all citizens are jeopardized. I want to translate women's rights situation in Afghanistan into a complete gender apartheid. Today marks 209 days that Afghan girls are banned from attending secondary and high school in Afghanistan. This is unfortunate to see that when Muslim world is embracing education, the Taliban is going into completely opposite direction against education for girls. We look at APL as an approach to influence leaders of the United States administration, US Congress, United Nations, European Union, G20 countries, world of Islamic countries to pay close attention to the realities on the ground in Afghanistan. We look at APL as a stage to raise the concerns of people of Afghanistan, a stage not to let governments normalize discrimination, a stage to call on immediate, concrete, actionable decisions against injustice, a stage to help people of Afghanistan illustrate their diversity, their civilization, their talents, their values that cannot be represented by the Taliban, their wish to live in peace, in liberty, in freedom, in dignity. And we all are here to prevent the evolution of the lost generation of girls to happen in Afghanistan. And many more desires. Dean Amani, ambassadors, faculty, staff, Princeton community, SPIA community, all supporters, we are looking forward to working with all of you to put forward a solution to the decade-long conflict and sufferings of the people of Afghanistan. Thank you. Now I have the honor and pleasure to present Mr. Wolfgang. Your Excellency, Mr. Wolfgang, the stage is yours.
Pleasure. Thank you very much, Salam. And I would like to express my enthusiasm that we are at this moment here. For someone for whom Afghanistan was life-changing, it's quite something with a wonderful Dean Amani Jamal and also with Ambassador Adela Raz to go into something which is absolutely relevant and important, especially in a time when there is a crisis saturation around the world. And it seems that many of the headlines push other headlines aside. And I think also that the Woodrow Wilson School, former Woodrow Wilson School, now School of Public and International Affairs, had an unimaginably powerful effect in the past to combine the best of academic research, the best what a university like Princeton can offer, with the practice and those who come from all kinds of places. To combine this also with the education of our students, but with many of their colleagues internationally. And so to create this network, this intergenerational network forward. There are two big points which I would like to raise, and I'm delighted that I can develop this with my friend and colleague and our new director, Professor Andrew Moravcik. The first of all is our credo has always been by, for, and with the Afghans and Afghanistan. Because in an institute which is concerned on self-determination, you respect the individuality, not just of obviously the individuals and their families and clans, but their communities, their various communities, and the respect of their cultural and religious identities. And most importantly, for me personally, the enduring respect and protection of women and girls. And now, as a proud grandfather, also obviously of the grandchildren and the elderly. And this all is part and parcel of the step forward, because this creates the next generation of leaders. And one of my big aims, and it perfectly reflects what you have all presented here, is to be also able to connect all those brilliant young Afghans who are distributed all over the world, from Europe to the Middle East, to Asia, to Central Asia. I don't need to explain this to you all here. And who are eager to assist and shape and contribute to the future of their country and its region. So hence, in a global mobilization, to make their voices heard and to let them actively participate and bring this together in an intergenerational, but also intergovernmental, and plus, very importantly, influence those state and non-state actors, the private and the public partnership, to go in those ways, look forward for what the next generation needs. I will do my utmost, and I again thank really the leadership of our SPIA for being in this, for having activated this and having made for many a dream come true. Thank you very much. And now I give back to our Dean, Professor Amani Jamal.
Thank you, Wolfgang, for that. Thank you to all the panelists for their wonderful introductory remarks. It's again such a pleasure and joy to have all of you here with us as we launch the Afghanistan Policy Lab. I want to ask our attendees to please place any questions they might have in the Q&A box. Please go ahead and do that. In the meantime, we do have an interesting question in the Q&A, but before we get to the meat of this question, if I may, I want to sort of ask a more macro level question based off of this question. As we begin to think about how the Policy Lab might be able to influence some of the policy conversations around next steps in Afghanistan, Ambassador Raz laid out the 4 core areas that will mandate our the attention of the lab. There's always the question about will a community in the diaspora be influencing local politics from a distance in ways that does not reflect the interest of the citizens of Afghanistan? If I may ask this question, how would you respond to this, both Ambassador Raz and MP Nahid?
Sure. Thank you, Dean Amani. And once again, our sincere gratitude to the whole team and your leadership. You were behind all this, making it happen. It was a concept, you brought it to an excellent initiative in something that's critically needed right now for Afghanistan. And a response to the question, I think for any society, especially for countries like Afghanistan, which had been in conflict for more than 4 decades, that is given that it pushes a large number of Afghans to leave the country and be the diaspora that's now scattered around the world. What we have seen, especially in last 20 years, the diaspora had been always engaged. And what we foresee in the coming future, and just the unfortunate events that happened in post-August 15 and the number of people that had to leave the country, and they're still in the process of leaving the country, there will be no doubt that their engagement would be extremely important. It will be vital. I always have a very common saying. I say, the love for the country, if it's in hearts of someone and hearts of Afghans, it really doesn't matter. Even if we go to moon, we're going to come back and try to do our part, what the country needs. And through the lab, we do see areas and spaces that we will be tapping on the resources and the expertise that the Afghan diaspora are able to contribute and have overseas for the future of Afghanistan, because it's a shared future. As an Afghan woman who have daughters, I do hope to see my daughters be able to live in Afghanistan, and in a country where they have the equal right like any other society and be able to study. So that's the dream and the wish of every other Afghan diaspora, and we hope to be able to tap on that.
I also wanted to jump in and reflect and echo on what Ambassador Roz mentioned. You know, Afghan diaspora consists of so many talents and expertise. Those who were advocates, who had talents, and they had to leave the country because of their ability to be game changers in Afghanistan. And also another factor is very important. That's why I say that APL launch is very, very timely. Do not forget that we are in the United States, one of the countries that can play a constructive role in Afghanistan future. I'm so hopeful. I'm still hopeful that US can continue to play a strong and constructive role in Afghanistan. And we can, through APL, we can influence the US that can provide much needed humanitarian aid to local NGOs to Afghanistan, that they can build a global coalition allies to prevent the normalization of relations with the group of terrorists in Afghanistan. US can help Afghan people create the type of government they want and they deserve, and so many other issues that this Afghan diaspora who are in this area in the United States can help.
Excellent. We have many questions, several questions that address the issue of women's rights or the education of females. Some of the questions, one of the questions asks, well, you know, insofar as education might be sort of like a policy prerogative, there is still the underlying issue of, let's say, norms or patriarchal norms that also discourage, if you may, young women from going to school. Another similar question on the issue of informal norms and preventing women from accessing egalitarian spaces, especially in education, is that a lot of the attitudinal measures of gender equality, whether they have to deal with, you know, women's right to work outside the house, whether women have a right to equal education, what we see is that women are far more supportive of these rights than their male counterparts in Afghanistan. How, as a policy lab or clinic, or in terms of thinking about policy recommendations to help mitigate the influence of these patriarchal norms, what role can the policy lab play to address some of these questions?
Do you want me, Dina Mani, to take the lead?
Yeah, I would actually welcome Ambassador Raz, MP Nahid, and then all my anybody else from our participants with us today to also chime in on the importance of the lab in terms of influencing the debate around these issues.
Sure. This is a really vital question for Afghanistan, and I think for all other countries around the world. We still have inequality that comes around the right for education, the right to work, and equal pay around the world. But Afghanistan, unfortunately, today is facing a situation that it is the only country on earth where women are banned formally by the regime to go to school and have the ability to study and pursue education or work. This Afghanistan is for sure a traditional country, a traditional society. There had been challenges along the line for various decades and centuries that we have faced. But at the same time, we had these moments or years or decades where we were able to make tremendous progress. And one of those eras and decades were the last 20 years that we moved forward. We made tremendous progress, and formally and by law, women were not banned from school. As a very local answer to this is that there is always the lack of education that prevents women from going to school. So a society, when it has a high level of illiteracy rate, we always foresee such challenges. But coming on the role of the lab, how it will address this current challenge, which is a formal policy by the state that bans women from going to school, we hope the engagement of the Muslim community will play a very important role, because the reason right now given is by the state had been that it is based on the religious guidance and what, as a Muslim society and as a Muslim country, we have seen and been educated that Islam guides us the other way. So the Muslim community and Muslim Ummah's engagement, I think there is also an important element that the critical role of women in the society, how much it impacts economic development. It's a country that makes half of the population are women, and no matter how rich or how poor the state is, if half of the population are not engaged, there is no prosperity one can see. And we hope that constructive discussion, constructive debate, and at the same time, those who have upper hand with the de facto regime in the country, they would be able to influence. And of course, there are many tools and various tools, and UN mechanism have been extremely impactful, and it needs to be tapped on. And the final answer is that that's the reason we have the lab. We really wanted to tackle this, and we really wanted to find a best way moving forward, because we simply cannot see Afghan women just been prevented from what they could truly utilize the potentials that they have like any other woman around the world.
Can I say something on this?
Please.
Yeah, there are two dimensions to the issue as you presented it, as a matter of fact. The part related to patriarchal social order, societal order, if you will, the oppressiveness of it is certainly not unique. And this is something that exists in other countries, whether Muslim majority countries or otherwise. So that part, as a matter of fact, I think one important way by which the agenda for women's rights can be advanced in Afghanistan, and they should be approached as matters of basic fundamental rights that attach to the humanity of people, apart from anything else. I think one thing that the lab can work on is to try to start some conversations with other countries of similar background, when the problem exists more prominently than others. And for those countries that are already in touch with Taliban, to be advised to kind of really get some of that dialogue going, encourage dialogue between countries that are of a similar background to the issue, and try to learn from their own experience. There's still issues to be tackled so far as status of women in society in those other countries, for sure, but they are in much better position, than they are currently in Afghanistan. So maybe one area where I think some consideration could be given is to really get some kind of dialogue and encourage countries in touch with Taliban already, and currently begin to introduce that as something that's expected. of them to try to really advance that conversation.
Excellent.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah, Wolfgang, definitely. Then MP Nahid, I know that you had your hand up as well, please.
Yeah. I wholeheartedly agree to what Salam Fayyad just said, and our experience has very clearly shown that if you consistently begin to affect and try to change the narrative, the international narrative, and the narrative also in those countries who are already deeply involved and who have all kinds of access to the governing elite, this does have an effect, especially also in organizations who are aid givers. And that is particularly also important, as I mentioned prior, for the private-public partnership, because this can really assist quite effectively, as we have found out. And so I hope if we, with our global reach, that we will have then those younger and emerging leaders be able to connect with us and to translate our ideas in their respective states and countries to alter the narrative.
Thank you, Wolfgang. MP Nahid, please.
Yeah, this is a wonderful question. Why the matter of education in Afghanistan can be interested for the policymakers in the United States. So, you know, the education ban is Taliban's response to the potential of transforming power of women through education. This is a force to change Afghanistan. Taliban want to stop the change through education. So girls' education can pave the ground for the community to energize, to revitalize, to get united, then to demand their rights. In fact, in the long term, Taliban suppressed the community under the pretext of suppressing girls' education. So this is related. This context is related to the matter of national security of the United States and Western countries, because Taliban is a group of terrorists. They designed to be terrorists, not officers, not policymakers, to implement good governance, to provide education and healthcare for the society. They established to be a group of terrorists for the agendas that they have in the region and also inside of the country. So this has a direct relationship to the matter of national security of the Western countries, and Taliban want to keep their soldiers in line for the further terrorist attacks. That's why they want to continue this fundamentalist approach against girls' education, against women freedom, and all these agendas. So we can change the narrative through letting the world know that the matter of women education in Afghanistan is the matter of national security of so many Western countries, because Taliban do not have the agenda to bring change into the society of Afghanistan, to develop the society of Afghanistan, and they're preventing it actually through girls' education.
Thank you, MP Nahid. The next round of questions sort of picks up where you just left off on the point of the Taliban government. And I know the Policy Lab will be dedicated to addressing humanitarian issues dealing with the daily lives of ordinary citizens in Afghanistan. Several of the questions are asked whether thinking about how to improve the daily conditions of citizens in Afghanistan, is it practical to think that the international community can continue to bypass the Taliban government, or will there need to be efforts on the ground to engage the Taliban, especially when one thinks about how to deliver humanitarian assistance or even advocating for girls' education through conditionality or other means? I know maybe this is above and beyond the mandate of the Policy Lab that we, for our purposes, but nevertheless, this is a policy question in terms of thinking about how to deliver to the citizens of Afghanistan with the Taliban government in place? Is there room, based on the questions here, is there room for reconciliation? Is there room for reconciliation with the security forces, the former Afghan government and the Taliban, and the international community? What might we say around this? I know Dan, Ambassador Kurtzer, raised his hand, and Prime Minister Fayyad. Then I'd love to hear from everybody, actually. This is a great opportunity. Ambassador Kurtzer.
Thanks, Amani. Look, these are two issues that are related and in a sense become the crux of the problem of implementation. There's no question that the lab can come up with terrific ideas and thoughtful policies and processes. But you've got two issues that will have to be considered. Number one, the Taliban is no longer a non-state actor. It's a state actor. We would wish otherwise, and hopefully at some point that will happen. But we're going to have to deal with the Taliban in some manner as a member of the international community. Number two, one of the major problems of delivering humanitarian assistance is humanitarian access. It's challenging under any circumstance, and will be even more challenging now given the circumstances on the ground in Afghanistan. For this reason, to go back to the first series of questions, we need to think about multilateral approaches. Something that's raised and delivered in a lab in Princeton, New Jersey, is not likely to gain much traction in Afghanistan, if we're honest about it. But to the degree that we can bring in partners around the world, and this is where LISD, the Liechtenstein Institute, is so well placed with existing partners, to bring about a multilateral approach that can transform what the lab develops as ideas into practical policies on the ground that may, over time, be more acceptable to a government led by the Taliban.
Excellent. Thank you, Ambassador Kurtzer. Prime Minister Fayyad.
Just building on what my friend Dan had just said, this, as a matter of fact, is a key area of interest in terms of what the likely or expected output of the lab should be, the how of things. Given the exceptional circumstances Afghanistan is going through right now, the how of things, two elements. First, the priorities. What are the areas of interest, where contributions are most needed? But I think of special importance in this particular case, given what we know about the situation right now, and which is likely to continue for the foreseeable future, in terms of there being a government that is boycotted by most everybody in the international community, how to deliver on those ideas when they are really translated into actions. So that's another, of course, area that the lab, I expect, will be busy with. What to do and how to do it. And I hope, as a matter of fact, in the process of interaction with all who can contribute to this work, working with the fellows in the lab, that policies will be thought through in a way that could promote the prospects for what you mentioned at the outset, national healing and reconciliation. There does exist right now in Afghanistan a government that's in charge. Mm-hmm. And there are some parties internationally that are in touch with it. And I think it's important to really, as a matter of fact, contribute some thinking as to what should be on the plate when those discussions take place. One area was mentioned right now: education, status of women, etc. That's something that definitely can be put there on the agenda. And we should not wait, and the idea should not be to wait until the dust settles on everything before things could be done. Again, how things are delivered could have an important contribution to the trajectory of a possible potential reconciliation, national healing, which is absolutely necessary.
Excellent. Thank you. Wolfgang, would you like to chime in on this, please?
Yes, and I go fully with what both Ambassador Kurzer and Prime Minister Fayyad have said. But I wanted to add something which has been a lot of in the discussions between Ambassador Ras and myself. The food and the sustainable livelihood is one thing, but the income and economic activity is a completely different thing. And through the leaving of the international community, up to some claim around 80% of economic activity in Afghanistan has evaporated. And this would be not such a big issue because the Afghan economy, one could really easily, and for many purposes and from many perspectives mobilized. However, in a time in the world where there's an absolute crisis fatigue and crisis overload, and just look at Europe and all those crises, and we have, of course, we have also Myanmar and with Yemen and with others. So there is only so much crisis management capability. And I think there is areas where we could really break the mold and come up with innovative ideas. Yeah, they might not work, but at least, we get these ideas out and help to enhance business. One of our great alums has really created single-handedly the saffron business in Afghanistan. They are still working. And so I see it. And it's, I have to say, it's women who do this a lot. And she can continue. So so it's very important for us to see some positive elements, and to build on those. And to build on those with the best possible success, because this or best possible to get the successful story out, because that will help, again, to get from public sector and other areas money in quickly, because they need this quickly. Spring is coming. That's it.
Thank you, Wolfgang. MP Nahid, please. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, just wanted to add to the remarks previously mentioned, as we have Taliban on the ground, a number of serious humanitarian crises have taken place in Afghanistan. Millions of internally displaced people or IDPs are stuck. We have healthcare system on the brink of collapse. We have massive food insecurity due to inflation, freezing of banking system. So all these issues are happening. And we also mentioned this in the previous meetings with Ambassador Ras, with His Excellency Fayyad, on how to have policy recommendation on this regard at the same time that we have Taliban that are under sanction, and there is no international banking system that is interested in sending money to Afghanistan. People need money and people need this humanitarian assistance. And therefore, I think one of the solution is that we can establish a humanitarian corridor in friendly countries, neighbor of Afghanistan, that can be a stage to provide assistance to the people. We can support local NGOs, civil society, that can be a catalyst in providing jobs and opportunities for the people. We can deliver basic services through in-kind assistance to Afghanistan. So many other ways, as Mr. Wolfgang also mentioned, brilliant ideas can be developed during this activities. That's why we established this Afghanistan Policy Lab.
Thank you, MP. Ambassador Ras.
Sure, Dina Mani. I think what colleagues said before me, I echo that. And probably this is one of the worthy question of our work. That's exactly why we raised it as part of our first priority of concentration, because we just have facts in the ground, which is people are hungry. It's a dire humanitarian situation. Economic activities have been halted. The country is in a complete isolation. And there are about 38 million people who live in Afghanistan. And that's where we have this challenging question in front of us. How do we help them, knowing that there are still sanctions on the regime, knowing that they're implementing policies that are not according to any humanitarian and human rights standards or principles. This is where the big question arrives. How do we move forward? Because there is no way that one needs to just stay behind and look up and say, this is what it is, we need to just make peace with it. I think I have not seen that type of attitude among policymakers here in the US and outside of the US as well. But the question is, how do we move forward? Sustainable economic development is an important element, as Wolfgang said. It has to be incorporated one way or the other and really make sure that that engine needs to be functionalized. But at the same time, there is immediate need that needs to be addressed, and that immediate needs cannot wait. What we also hope, I think would be a unique approach for Afghanistan Lab to incorporate ideas from inside the country, from people who live in Afghanistan, from women of Afghanistan, from the civil society, from the younger generation, and also some of the institutions and mechanisms that were built before, and can we tap on those? I think that's where our hope is. This is a complex question. There's no simple answer to it, and we hope we would be able to provide a few angles, and as colleague said, we are not a space where we could implement policies, but we hope to influence them. We hope to raise the right question and propose the right solutions, and incorporate the unique voices of Afghan, the genuine voices from Afghanistan, and that is the younger generation, the women, the civil society, people right now who have lost jobs and not able to go to work.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Raz, for that. I'm going to turn to my colleague.
Very quickly, just very quick, something if I may.
Yeah.
I think Ambassador Kanser was first to talk about the need to think multilaterally, what can be done multilaterally. And I'm reminded actually to say something about one particular organization that can play an important role by the remarks made by Ambassador Raz, and that's the United Nations. I mean, given what was going on right now, the one international organization that has the standing and the purview and the capacity to deal in situations like this through its various programs, mechanisms, and agencies is the United Nations. And that really has to be an integral part of the thinking process and the production process as ways of delivering the aid, the assistance, the messaging, etc., are considered.
Thank you so much, Prime Minister. I know also Professor Moravchik wanted to chime in on the multilateral potential here to address some of the ongoing issues with the Taliban government. Yes.
Yes, I think we can draw on ideas from the Afghan people, and we can work in the United States. But at the end of the day, in the short and medium term, it seems to me, for the reasons that most of the colleagues here have pointed out, the place where you have the most flexibility in the system to do something different is going to be with developed countries or regional actors, not including the United States. So it's not just countries that are culturally proximate who engage in cultural discussions or culturally based discussions, but purely materially. If we want to activate multilateral actors, or we want more bilateral action, it's going to have to come from relatively wealthy countries, and it's probably not going to come from the United States first. Yeah. So in order to achieve that, we need to have in place, and that's what Lizzie is hoping to help with here, a network where we can find out where the places are where that could start. and what means would be necessary to make it happen. That means looking to Europe, it means looking to Japan, it means looking to countries like Turkey. It means being very open and flexible about who in the international system has the political flexibility and goodwill to make this happen. So I'm hoping that that will be helpful in translating what we know from the Afghans needs to be done, but working around what are likely to be political constraints, particularly in this country for some time to come.
Thank you so much, Professor Moravcik. Wolfgang, I'll give you 30 seconds to wrap up our thoughts on this point.
Well, wonderful. Just a word, the G20.
Yeah.
The one organization where there is a lot of possibility to move forward. It's the G20, and it's also related to cultural and other things, and for the regions and things. That's it.
Thank you so much. And on that note, we have several other questions we couldn't get to due to time constraints, but these are some of the key topics and debates that our experts in the lab will be sort of exploring and debating, and we'll be bringing in additional interlocutors to sort of help elevate the policy recommendations that come out of the lab. What I'm also particularly excited about is the role the lab will play in the everyday life at SPIA over the next year in terms of enhancing our sense of community and understanding around issues related to Afghanistan, in terms of engaging our students and our faculty. This is something that we will benefit from tremendously. So we're very honored that you will be with us for the entire year. With that, I welcome all of you to follow us on our social media channels, on our website to learn more about the Afghanistan Policy Lab and our forthcoming events. We look forward to seeing you, and thank you so very much.